always this buoyant when she was running against Barack Obama. There was always a
That's true.
little,
A little more suppressed.
you pick up on that. Yeah. Yeah, and I talked to some of, our colleagues, and they're saying the same thing. She seems to be much more comfortable in her skin doing the campaigning. And I don't know how she can physically,
That's a lot.
even if she was a lot younger, it's such an ordeal. She was at 3 different places in Chicago
For the
that day,
fundraiser? Wow.
different audiences,
Right.
and she's got to be on all the time. She's
Yeah.
not like
She can't just
leaning
hang out.
back,
She
in a
breathes.
lazy boy or anything.
Right.
And she's got to always have her mind working. What a torture that campaign is. And then even last night they said she was flying, after she made her acceptance speech, she was jumping on an airplane to get to another event that night in Austin, Texas.
Oh my goodness.
She's,
I hope she can get to sleep, all right?
well, she does yoga. And I think that's helped her a lot, from what I'm hearing, is that she can do some of that stuff without going to a gym,
Yeah.
to a swimming pool.
Right,
or
you can do it
something.
in a room,
She can
hotel
do it in
room.
her suite or something
Yeah.
like that. And, I think that's going to be mandatory for her to stay. Plus, all those airplanes, you get sick, getting
Yeah.
colds, germs.
Yeah.
And now this is her second go-round.
Sure.
on that, so, but she looks, don't you think she
Yeah,
looks?
Yeah.
She looks
I
great.
thought she was a lot younger.
The picture on the front of the New York Times this morning, I thought, we both stared at it, and I thought, geez, she really looks, she looks better than Bill.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
he's
that's true.
lost a lot of weight and
Yeah.
is vegetarian, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But she must watch her diet really closely.
Right. That's tough. Yeah. So Steve, let me just ask just some basic questions, because we know who you are, but people watching this, like in the future, in the historians. Steve, what's your name?
It's Steve Quast, that's spelled Quast.
Okay. And when you grew up in Park Ridge, what was your address growing up in Park Ridge?
616 North Home.
Okay.
Home Avenue is not far from the school here, but I was on the other side of Toohey Avenue.
Okay. And what schools did you go with Hillary? Was it just high school?
Just high school, Maine East that one year, and then Maine South. So by comparison to a lot of her other classmates that remained really close to her, I'm thin in that terms, because she went to grammar school,
Sure.
as everyone knows, and grew up here. So I got to know her late in the
Right.
game, so to speak. But then we saw each other a little bit after high school at events and stuff like that, parties basically that
Right.
were held during the summertime.
So talk about you growing up and your family. Give us some background about your family and what you were like as a kid. And
Well, one of the things, I'll try to relate this to the Hillary experience, but Hillary had a very strict father. He was a very demanding guy, if you've read anything about her upbringing.
Yeah.
And my father was a career naval officer.
okay.
So our fathers were not too dissimilar in their perspective of right and wrong out there. It was pretty clear what was expected,
Yeah.
and there was a certain amount of rigor and discipline within the household.
Okay.
And I think when I got to know her, we had that kind of background similarity that kind of, you wanted to please your parents.
Sure.
And she certainly fell into that category, and he was a staunch Republican, as was my father.
Right.
And so a good way to get on board there would be to support Barry Goldwater, who at that time was campaigning as a conservative, very conservative candidate for president. So that's really where, I got to see her in action. because we had a office down on downtown Park Ridge at Meacham and Prospect. The building is still there.
Sure.
And
were you in a office upstairs?
no, we're on the ground floor.
Okay,
We might have used the second floor, and it was the Maine Township Youth for Goldwater.
so let me back up a second about you. Now, how many siblings? Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I got two brothers who are both career naval officers.
Are they older or the younger?
Older.
Oh, they're older.
Yeah, and I did a Navy stint as well.
Okay,
And so I'm kind of the black sheep too in the family, in that I tend to support Hillary's
you
perspective
got a good reason.
of governance. So we have interesting family reunions, to say the least.
Sure. So talk about when you went to high school, what were you like as a kid in high school?
Well, I mentioned to you about Maine East. I came in from, I'd lived at Great Lakes, which is a naval base. My father retired from the Navy, so he got a job with an insurance company, and that forced us to move to Park Ridge.
And how old were you when you moved?
I was a junior in high school.
Okay, so you came in okay, got it.
And it was very tough to break into those
Sure.
cliques. So here's this new kid. But fortunately, I played on the football team,
Oh, okay.
and that gave you some sort of cred at that time. You got to know people during the summer.
Sure.
Before school even started, and a lot of those football guys were, well-known personalities within the school. So I could follow along in that regard. So that helped a lot.
Sure.
Playing football, and then it didn't. I had expected the cliquish thing. I'd been warned of it when
Sure.
we came in. The counselor said, "Hey, listen, you're walking into a school of 4,000, 5,000 people that's pretty well separated by this, that, and whatever." But it took a while, but I was gradually found my way in that I could get to know some of the people in different groups. So one of the things I did was I went into drama, which Maine East at that time had a great dramatics program. Harrison Ford
Right.
came out of that environment a few years before that. And so I thought, hey, I'm in a school like this, just don't play football and whatever else, do something else. So I was a little bit of a hybrid.
Sure.
I did that, and then got to know a lot of females in that dramatics, so I was in plays, and then our senior year here, which I don't know if it's still a big deal, but the musical was big. Is
Yeah.
it?
Still a big deal.
Big thing. It rehearsed for I don't know how many months before, and it was Oklahoma.
Okay.
And, got to know a lot of people through that. So I was, for those 2 years, blessed to be able to be in situations that got me known to people and so forth.
Sure.
And then the whole Goldwater thing came, and Hillary was real good friends with my girlfriend at the time. So
And what was your girlfriend's name?
her name was Suki Askew,
Okay.
and she went on to work for NASA. A lot of very interesting career paths by a lot of people out of Maine Township at that time. I just walked up and down the hall, and I noticed some
Sure.
plaques. But there's a lot of us. Steve Goodman was in our class. I don't know if that name rings a bell to you, but he was a very well-known musician, performer, and very, wrote a lot of the Cubs that they still play at the beginning of the Cubs broadcast during the game. If you go to a Cubs game, they play Steve Goodman stuff. Very talented guy, and so you had a cross section of a lot of different things, and I always thought I was very fortunate to be able to be in athletics and the arts. And then politics, really,
Right.
at the end with the Youth for Goldwater thing, because, you know, we had money, I told you over the phone, the Republican Party had money, and so we had outfits, and Goldwater was a can, it was like Mountain Dew, that we would go to different events in the summertime and pass it out to people, and H2O it was called.
So now, when you were growing up, was your politics discussed in your household by your mom or dad at all?
Well, yeah, pretty much, you know, supporting the military, which at that time was associated directly more with the Republican Party.
Right. So, get back about your girlfriend and Hillary. So, take us through like the beginnings. Like, what prompted you to get involved with volunteering with the Goldwater campaign?
Well, again, keep in mind the times at that time.
Yeah, and what year was this?
Well, we were class of 65, so you're talking early 60s. It was a pretty active time. I remember walking home from Maine East, which was a good walk at that time. I'm near the D Road train station, so
Sure.
I can put it in perspective. Because they let us out because the president had been shot.
Oh,
They stopped classes. We had a big game that night against Libertyville High School, which I think was canceled because the world stopped
right.
in its tracks. And everyone was just confused.
Right.
It was a very disorienting time to have a popular president, such a youthful guy like John Kennedy,
Right.
you know, get assassinated.
Right.
So you talk about things that change and the new normals.
Sure.
I think a lot of people started to get concerned then about, and the Cold War was going on, and there were all sorts of conspiracy theories at that time that his death was caused by more than just a
Yeah.
crazed gunman in a bookstore or whatever. And so a lot of things were up for grabs, you know, a lot of thinking. So that you talk about what went on in households at that time, it was heavily influenced by where is this country going that assassinates its president?
Right.
You know, that happens in underdeveloped countries.
Yeah.
Not if it happens, it wouldn't happen in our, the Russians was a big deal then.
Yeah.
There was a Sputnik and
Cold War.
And Kennedy made a vow to catch up in the space race. So those are the conversations that would be going on. So a strong military was always a topic, and most of my dad's friends were either had former military service. At that time, most people did,
Sure.
Again, that's what people did. They
Yeah.
went into the service, and it doesn't happen like that now. So, the Goldwater thing had really resonated off of that because he talked about a strong America and strong defense and safe and secure. And, there's a lot of parallels, quite frankly,
Sure.
to what's going on right now because there's that fear factor and people get shot in, movie theaters or whatever in San Bernardino.
Yeah.
So people fear. There was a lot of fear in the air. There was a lot of uncertainty aligned with that fear, or where are we going as a country here? And then the guy that shoots him gets shot.
Yeah.
And this is all on television.
Yeah.
It's like you're watching a crazed world in front of your very eyes in Texas.
Yeah.
Not in
Right.
wherever
Some third
else.
world country.
And
Right.
so a lot of the, I think what probably motivated people to be involved going forward, that 60s, 70s, and Hillary went out to the East Coast, which was much more of a haven for, free thought and whatever else. So she went to Wellesley and came back, and so that's what we would discuss, what was going on in the
Sure.
East Coast. A lot of us went to it was typical more so to go to she was gonna go, I think, to Michigan or Michigan State until two advisors of hers, who had, one had gone to Smith and one had gone to Wellesley, they were teaching here, part-time, getting
Right.
credentialed, and they pulled her off and said, have you thought about going to the East Coast? Those are the sister schools,
Right.
and I think that was, for her, no, I don't think her dad was ever trying to, in fact, he probably fought that, I would guess, because he saw that as a lot of the hippie movement, Woodstock, and all
Sure.
that stuff, was all East Coast. And
Yeah.
so she probably had to do a little sales job with her father that would allow her to go there, and I think I remember saying that they went out there and visited, I think, or something, and he was relieved that there were no, Wellesley wasn't that radical a place. It wasn't
Right.
like Columbia or some of the other schools like that.
Right.
And I went in the Navy, I went to college and then had to do a naval stint, and I was in Washington DC, and there's definitely a different culture out there. I got my graduate degree at American University in Washington, and that was a pretty strong liberal, a lot of demonstrations going on against the war in Vietnam. That was in the 70s.
Right.
So it was always East Coast. So she went out there and actually gave, as I recall, she gave her commencement address.
Right.
Was Hillary at her college.
So speaking back, like, in high school, so now.
Yep.
Did you, how did you guys get involved with the Goldwater camp? Did your girlfriend say, hey, can you recall what prompted you to actually get involved at that
At that time, you had a lot of student government. She was active in student government.
Uh-huh.
And I kind of was too, although she was more well-known and ran
Were you on
for-
student council, or were you?
I think I was on,
volunteering for things?
I was in some committees and
Okay.
stuff like that. And so it was interesting, and then the whole situation of the election and everything was
Right.
coming up, and so then all of a sudden, you see some sign in the bulletin board or whatever, sign up for Youth for Goldwater or whatever.
So tell us, so you signed up for Youth for Goldwater, and tell us what was that like? So what did you work with, was there an adult kind of coordinator, or how did you,
They gave us a lot of latitude.
Yeah, so go into as much
We'd
detail.
go
on
down
what
and
you
we'd
did.
have desks and stuff like that in storage rooms down in that office building on Prospect. And then there would be rallies around the township. Maine West had a big rally where they brought in country and western singers.
Mhm.
Like it is now. They make it a big party
Right,
that rallies around the candidate. And that was, I think, a lot at the beginning of that. I don't know if that happened much prior to it, but it was entertainment starting, and that would be political.
so it was you and Hillary, and was there a lot
And
of
there was
other kids?
other kids that would be involved in it, because, Park Ridge is strong, and probably still is, a strong Republican
Sure.
haven here. And so it wasn't hard to get other people to rally around. Lyndon Johnson was very controversial, and so Goldwater was a very charismatic guy. He was an orator, he could talk, and he had a real engagement capacity.
Right.
So a lot of us young people gravitated to that. And it was simple, he made things real simple,
Right. So,
be strong, be this, be that, and he's famous for his, you guys maybe don't, what got him defeated ultimately was, he said, extremism in the pursuit of liberty is no
Yeah.
vice,
oh, that's right.
and that they crucified him
Sure.
when he made that declaration, and his moment
Mm-hmm.
of going downward.
So now, did you know Hillary before you guys?
Well, I just, yeah, a little
Just
bit
a
because of
little-
my girlfriend.
Right.
Sookie was a good friend. They grew up and went to grammar school together. and
Okay.
Buddies. And Betsy Ebling is a name you
Yeah.
maybe have heard about.
Right.
They were all in that clique.
Okay.
And I got in there, I got my credentials in that clique because I was a boyfriend of one of them
I see.
and a football player and did other stuff. And so they,
So what was can you recall, like, what was your first impression of her as a girl?
well, the other day when Obama said, they were asking him, I think I mentioned this to you over the phone, it really resonated with me because they said, what about the candidates, Bernie Sanders and Hillary? And he said, Hillary is wicked smart. And that is such, if you had to use, she was very intelligent. She got elected most likely to succeed in her senior year because she was just smart and wasn't a bookworm smart. She was social, yet they'd always defer to her, Ellen Press, and a few other people. There were some really smart women in that class, and she was she spearheaded a lot of that. And that was gradually when women were, seen not just cheerleaders or whatever, they were starting sports. The whole thing was slowly starting to change. And then when these smart women, rather than, they'd go to great schools, look for careers, get law degrees, go to work for prestigious places. That was just happening at that time. And so with Hillary, she was right at the forefront of that. And she was just smart, and she was there was a television show where schools competed called It's Academic. And they would have questions, and, see how smart, who was the smartest high school, basically.
Right.
And so she was on that with a couple of other smart people, and there were some other women, Ellen Press being one of them, and I think there was maybe one other woman, and she was in debate. She
Right.
debated, and that was starting to flower, that women just didn't have to take a back seat to the guys who would be the out front people and all
Right.
that stuff. So she made a name for herself with all that stuff. And she was very involved with her church, the Methodist church here too.
You
I was
didn't
not
go to
involved
Methodist
in
church,
that.
okay.
But friends of mine were.
Okay.
And they traveled, they would take them during spring break, they'd go down south to, this is the beginning of the civil rights movement.
Right.
And really what probably swung Hillary more than anything from a conservative, Goldwater, Park Ridge Republican way was she went down to the south side and
Sure.
voter registration, and she got involved. She saw the other side of Chicago, so to speak, and met with Martin Luther King.
Right.
That group had a moment with, I think, at Orchestra Hall or wherever they
Mm-hmm.
got. And I think that started to open her eyes a lot to, it wasn't just Lily White Park Ridge.
Sure.
I think we had one black, maybe
At school.
one, two, or three black people in this school.
Right.
Probably either Maine East or Maine South. Our whole basketball team was white guys.
Right.
And how things have changed, it's just, not so maybe much here. It's still pretty much, but, so she got, we always kidded, like Harlem Avenue was always like the border. You wouldn't go, your parents would say to you, where are you going? Don't go east of Harlem.
Oh, really?
East of Harlem was the city, and that got dicey.
I see.
So Harlem was
That was a
the
hard
east
stop.
border
Right.
of where we would go in Mannheim, between Harlem and Mannheim. That's where you could go to people's parties or houses or restaurants or whatever. You can get much more east. It's not really.
Yeah.
But Hillary did. She went with her church group and whatever else, and she got immersed, saw a different side of life.
Sure.
And then I went down south with Young Life. It was, I don't know if that still exists, but that was the religious group for young people
Okay.
that went to places like Birmingham and other places to see what was going on.
So now, tell us a little bit more about, and when you guys, you mentioned you helped with rallies for the Goldwater. So tell us about what kinds of things day to day did you guys go around knocking on doors? What other?
Phone calls, knocking on doors, passing out literature, train station.
Oh, okay.
Here's some pamphlet, here's this, we hope you'll vote. And
So this must have been, this is probably the fall, or the summer and fall of '64?
yeah, right.
Okay, right, because he would have been the, and then, do you recall any stories or any incidents or anything with Hillary when she was whip smart or anything like that?
Well, they were called Goldwater Girls,
Right?
and they had costumes, like
What
he's
is a
from
costume?
Arizona, so it was cowboy outfits that they would wear.
You don't have any pictures of her in that.
Just that I don't have Goldwater, any of the cans of pop and pictures like that. I mean,
So she wore the Goldwater girl
I've never
outfit?
seen many pictures of her. She doesn't like, she gets asked about being a Goldwater girl
Sure.
a lot. And I think one time I saw her and I said, do you believe that, she's been good. She's brought our reunions when she was in the White House with Bill.
Right.
She hosted one of our reunions out there.
Right.
And invited a lot of us to the inaugurations.
Right.
Which I've been privileged to go to and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I said, really, that we were conservative Republicans when we were in high school? And she'd say, that Republican Party is a lot different than the Republican Party these days.
Yeah.
And it was a much more tolerant place. And she's always felt there's been a calculated attack on her and her husband from parts of the Republican Party.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do here, is trying to get a picture of her as a teenager. I think the thing is that people have gotten an image of her, I think, distorted of what, and it's not probably an accurate picture of true picture. So that's why we're trying to.
That's a very accurate description. It
Yeah.
hurts me when they say she's a big liar and this. I haven't been with her subsequently, obviously, but you would have never said that about her in high school, that she's conniving. And there were people like that,
Right.
looking out for their best and would do anything and say anything or whatever. But you would never think that that was something with her. So when she gets called, robotic,
Right.
and she's just always looking out for $1, and it doesn't jive
With the person you
then
know.
what she was at all. And I agree with you. I think there's been over the years that they think she doesn't have character. You may not agree with her on a lot of what she believes in, but I don't think there's a character problem there.
Right.
But
So what was
Republicans would certain
disagree,
Republicans
certainly.
would.
So what was like, if you had to describe her personality back when you knew her, other than whip smart, what was she just like as a girl? And that you recall?
Well, very involved. She was involved in a lot of stuff. And if there's one message I think for young people is dive in. She dove into a lot of things. She was at student government, her church. She was involved. She didn't spectate. She
Right.
got involved in stuff, and she'd be at the parties. Big social things at that time were, we had a lot of little bands
Yeah.
that would play at people's houses, people that had bigger houses.
Oh, really?
One of them was on the lake over here on D Road.
On Murphy Lake?
Murphy Lake, yeah.
Okay.
So that our entertainment was, and there'd be some beer, not too many, not at that time. The drug thing was not, that I have observed or whatever.
Mhm.
But there was beer drinking and bands. And there were a number of guys that could play, that there were Park Ridge. There's some of them still playing together. Some of them were at come to our reunions and still play. And that was the social thing. Who's having the party? And,
Okay.
and Hillary would show up, but, she wasn't pursued by a lot of men. She wasn't, because she was, attractive, but not a glamour girl,
Okay. Yeah, what was her, what can you recall any of her, how did she dress, her appearance?
She was pretty, at that time, we were all pretty, to be laughed at, loafers, and khaki pants, and,
Right.
button-down shirts, and then the girls were not like my daughter. They wear outfits that would have never been worn then.
Right.
So she was Park Ridge was pretty conservative. I mean, if you started to show a lot of that, you get, what's wrong with her? So people were really trying to fit in. So Hillary
Right.
would be, here's some pictures, I don't know if you sent them.
Right.
So she dressed normal, and she had a pretty face, she still does, but she didn't have great physique, and at that time that was probably, helpful to young
Sure.
women to get men's attention and so forth. So, but she was so very social,
Mm-hmm.
but always was the one that if you needed something done, or a letter written, or something in the newspaper, Hillary would write it. Hillary would be the person she'd be the go-to girl to communicate and reason.
Did you ever see her get involved or try to persuade an adult at the time to do anything, or have a conflict, or with administration or anything like that? Is there any kind of?
Well, I would say that basically, like a lot of us at that time, we were pleasers
Sure.
rather than renegades.
Yeah.
Or whatever. It was, you really wanted your parents' approval and your teachers' approval. It was probably great to teach then,
Mm-hmm.
because, you didn't
Not like today's students, right?
have that,
Sure.
kind of thing going on at that time. It was just a different.
Yeah, it was different. Now, was there a guy named Art Curtis?
Yes.
Were you guys friends, or was he involved in volunteering, or do you know about him much?
He probably would have. He probably would have been in the Youth for Low Water.
Okay.
Thing, yeah. And Betsy's husband Tom was, she married his high school associate.
Okay. So was there a lot of kids in the Goldwater kids? I mean, there was just a whole flood of you guys in full?
Well, there was a fair amount of people because we could go and have we had budgets.
Oh, okay. So now I'm starting to.
We got money there. They can buy food, pizza, and whatever else.
It was a great.
Why not follow them along?
It sounds like a great. Yeah.
Because we didn't have too much money in our own pockets at that time.
Right, that makes sense. So it was not just it was political. It was they gave you funds in order to go ahead and have parties, and so it was like mine as well.
It was mostly social stuff.
Right.
It wasn't heavy duty.
Right. It wasn't like
policy,
you were inspired. I need to look at all.
burning flag, you know, or
Sure.
it was, go, where can you have a good time? What can we have a pizza party? Can we have a this thing? Can we
Sure.
have a, whatever, dance? Could we, you know, get people to be aware of Barry Goldwater.
I see.
And,
Now, did you ever?
so it's fun centric,
Right.
not heavy duties policy statements.
So of all the goods, just if you recall, who was really the big prime student volunteer at the time, do you know? Was there anybody that you can recall? Like, was there anybody kind of running the show?
Like an adult?
No, like any of your fellow students were.
Well, Hillary would probably
Hillary
be as
would be
close to
probably the
that
big,
as-
okay,
because she had a respect of a lot of the men, because she hung out with a lot of the women that they knew.
okay,
So they got a chance to interface with her. She wasn't a loner
right,
at all, but she wasn't, you know, this congeniality either.
Right.
She wasn't trying to. So people respected her. That's what I would say. If there's one feeling they had for her is respect, because she could be social, be intellectual, be active, care, and didn't have an agenda
right.
at that time.
Did you ever go over to her house?
If I did, I don't remember. She lived on Wisner, and there were a lot of people that lived around there that
Yeah.
were all, you know, the Poyers and a lot of other people that were friends of hers would have parents that were a little more congenial.
Right, yeah,
You know, you usually gravitated to the houses where the
right,
parents,
Come on
come
over,
on
right,
in,
yeah.
you know, come in. They're all in the basement, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, I don't think her father would fall in that case.
it doesn't sound like it. It
He was
doesn't
pretty
sound like
rough.
it. Right. Did you, I've heard that she's pretty bright, but she also was competitive, you know, pick up sports and things like that, and
Yeah.
she was we talked to Mike Andrews, and
Yeah, Mike, right.
he
would be
said
a good one.
that, you know, she'd get in there and mix it up, whether playing touch football and things like that. Did you guys?
I didn't that probably was more in middle school.
Okay.
By the time I don't think she was on any varsity team here. I could be wrong,
No,
but I don't think she
so.
was a letter type. But she was involved in sports, swimming, and a lot. She still swims, I guess, I've heard.
Mhm.
And she worked for the park district, I know, because there's a park real close to where she lives, and she worked there in the summers. And I always heard from others, like my girlfriend, that she was really good with young kids,
Yeah?
with younger people. She was like that.
Right.
Liked, teaching them how to kick a soccer ball or whatever.
Sure.
She was.
So I think I read a story that she, I was telling the girls that she, maybe through the Methodist Church, that she babysat some of the families with migrant kids or
Yeah,
did
I
like
think she
that.
did that.
Yeah, yeah,
She was a doer,
Right.
you know. She got in there, you know. If there was a thing to do, she wouldn't go, well, I don't know, what am I going to get out of that?
Right.
She would do
She would-
stuff.
yeah, she was very active, right.
Very active person. So it didn't surprise me when she went on and did what she did, because she was always you know, she was an explorer. She would go.
Mhm.
Maybe there's something here.
Did you have Paul Carlson as a
I
history?
didn't.
Okay,
But he had a big influence on her,
right,
and he's a very conservative guy. And
yeah, he's supposed
That
to
had a lot
gave
to
her that book, Conscience of the Conservative.
conscious of the conservative, right?
Right, and there was, there was a story about, you know, the voter fraud after the election. Of course, Goldwater lost, as you know. Do you remember, do you remember, were you at the campaign headquarters or anything during the election, or can you recall any of that, or?
Gosh, you know,
Not really?
we were just, you know, heartbroken.
Right.
We worked and then didn't work. Then there was a lot of, you know, voter fraud stuff, and she dove into that too.
Yeah. Now, did you, I understand with her and Betsy, they went down, and do you know anything about that? other
Just
than
what I've
just
heard
too?
and read, that
Mhm.
the two of them went on the south side and you went crazy, that again, that whole mentality is don't go too much east of Harlem.
Right,
And they went to the south side and interviewed people, right? And they
yeah,
talked
she
to,
checked on,
where do
she
you
checked on
live?
addresses and.
How many people
Yeah.
live there? And-
Right, and they were very surprised to, what are you doing here? She did not look like she was from the area, put it politely. And, yeah, I don't think they told their parents. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and then they found out later what they were doing.
But that was kind of her personality.
Right.
If she would have asked her dad every time she was gonna do any of this stuff, or go to these parties and whatever, so she probably lived separate
Yeah,
in that regard. I think her mother was a lot easier on her.
right,
And very supportive of her going out east to school, stuff like that, that I'm sure he was cringing.
right. So, is there any other kind of notes or things like that, that we should know, or like that, especially like, we're really trying to get a full picture, like just anything obscure or anything that you recall that we should talk about a little bit?
I did a little
And girls,
homework myself.
just jump in with any questions you
Uh,
have too.
Well, I know that the people in Park Ridge always have had a kind of a arm's length. People say, well, if she would have been a Republican, they'd have a shrine next to the library there at 5 Points or whatever.
Sure.
But they always were,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew a lot of people at the Park Ridge Country Club, and I could, those people, you were just, a lot of them,
Yes.
they probably wouldn't want her to enter the club, frankly. And when she didn't take, when she still used her name rather than, she was Hillary Rodham
Right,
for a long time.
right,
That doesn't get talked about too much, but
right,
people in Park Ridge just, knowing you didn't do that as a woman. You took the man's name.
right,
And they thought that was borderline blasphemous and typical of a liberal
right,
person, that she wouldn't take Bill's name right away.
right,
And then, she wore thick glasses for a while before she got contacts.
right,
And had her hair long and stuff like that, that just Park Ridge people, my mother's bridge group and people like that, man, they didn't take to her at all.
right,
And it was interesting, though, her classmates, many of them were Republicans, still didn't see her in that regard, that they just felt she went a different direction.
Right.
But they always felt that she shared a lot of the common values
right,
of that they shared. She
Yeah.
just saw a different route
right,
to get there.
right,
And, but the city of Park Ridge, I don't know, and I don't know if this high school I don't know what the high school is.
she's
brought
one
her
of,
back.
she's on the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I saw that. I was
Mhm.
glad to see that picture
Mhm.
that's up there. I just, I didn't know if they wanted to stay out of politics or stuff like that, but I think it's very interesting. I mean, and I think for you and your peer group, really, to see a woman that got immersed in a lot of different things, never knowing where it was going to take her exactly. So she gets into Youth for Goldwater or Republican things, and look what happened. I mean, and you just never know.
Right.
And Hillary had that it's better just to dive in. You don't know what you're going to be doing in 6 or 7 years. Your views may change, but what I think bothers people in my generation about people in your generation is that you think it's not always cool to be involved. You like to stay out of all that stuff. And I think that's why I encourage our kids. We raised them in the city, which to me was better, in many ways than my education, because like I didn't, see a diversity of student until I got to college or whatever. So
Right.
my kids grew up on the north side, so they had to take the L, and they had to watch what street they went down, and they had to read situations, and it's just a little bit. And I've always said, just get involved, get into something. And
Right.
Hillary is a poster child for that.
Right.
I mean, if you want to say one thing about her early years here is she didn't shy away from getting into a lot of different stuff: athletics, politics, church, student government,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
She would do it. And I think that, that she could become the leader of the free world, says something to anybody in here's a woman went to public schools, and wasn't, rich. Her parents did not have a lot of money. They were blue collar workers. He was a salesperson or something, I think. And so it wasn't the rich part of Park Ridge that she was
Right.
in. She would just dive in, and she was an inspiration. I know to, like my girlfriend and others, they were inspired by Hillary and motivated to do more than just get married. And nothing wrong with that, but that there were options, and that,
Right.
she got criticized pretty roundly for making one of the, she says, I'm not gonna bake cookies, remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Right.
not gonna go home. Sorry, but I just don't go home and bake cookies. I'm looking for a career.
Right.
And I don't understand really why she's having problems with people your age. That's what's being written, that she's not, there's a gender gap or an age gap, that the younger women are not. And then Gloria Steinem and others
Sure.
have kind of come rallying around her saying, hey, she was a change agent, for
Right.
a lot of the things you take for granted. People like her and others were. I remember being down in, she really took on healthcare, when she was in the White
Mhm.
House as First Lady.
Yeah.
And she came and spoke at the State of Illinois building. And I saw her down there in
Mhm.
front of a small group. And they were picketing her,
Right.
because it was affordable care-ish,
Mhm.
Obamacare stuff that she was fostering
Right.
at that time. And she got slammed down on it.
Right.
What are you doing? You're a First Lady. That's not what you should be doing. You shouldn't be sticking your nose into legislative kinds of things, just entertain
Right.
in the White
It
House.
looks like, reading about her, she never went, as in high school and on, she never didn't listen to people saying, oh, you can't do it because you're a woman, or it's not been done before, or you shouldn't. She just, from all that we've read, is that she would just take on a challenge and go for it over and over. And as you were saying, that she's a doer, and even if it was a huge obstacle, and she's not succeeded all the time, but she's kept trying. And she's trying right now.
It's really an amazing story. I mean, I don't know, she gets up all the time, gets up off the ground. I mean, what she went, Vince Foster stuff, stuff that
Right, would knock out most people.
would just say,
Right.
hey, it's not
Worth
It's
it.
not worth it
She's
to
a tough,
get
she's a tough
ridiculed
lady,
like
even
that. She's,
if no matter
if she
you agree with
loses,
her or
they're
not.
gonna have to be pretty good to beat her. But,
Right.
I'm not saying she's gonna be the president, but if they're gonna beat her, she's not gonna cower. They're not,
Right.
Donald Trump or whoever it is not gonna be able to intimidate her.
Sure.
And
So girls, what kind of what kinds of notes and comments or questions that you're listening to Steve that come to mind?
I don't know, just one thing that, I don't know, I asked last time was, what's your favorite memory of her? Like, if you had to pick an event or a moment that, like, when you think of her, that's what comes up. Like,
That's a very good question.
what is it?
And it's more when she was in the White House. I had my 2 kids there for one of the inaugurations or whatever. And again, some of us got invited to other, just smaller events in the White House. And I had gotten married later, so my kids, most of my classmates' kids were either high school, college, but my kids were
Little.
2 and 4. And it was the Beanie Baby age.
Right.
And my daughter wouldn't go anywhere without her Beanie Babies.
Right.
It was that kind of attachment.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to go through all this screening to get into the White House, you know. And my daughter has a brown bag of Beanie Babies that she wanted to. So we said, you know, they're going to probably not let you in to the White House with the Beanie Babies.
Right.
But they did.
Right.
And so then we saw Hillary in the hallway, and she came over and she sees the brown bag.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I think, says something about Hillary. So she says, what's your name? Annie. She goes, Annie, what do you got in there? She goes, I got my Beanie Babies. And at that point, Hillary went down on her knees and went through the whole bag of Beanie Babies with my daughter at her level. You know, they're not, you're in the White House.
Right.
You know, and
Mm-hmm.
she got down on one knee maybe.
Right.
And she wasn't doing it, you know.
Superficially.
Right. It was very sincere, and she got to one Beanie Baby, and it was a donkey.
Uh-huh.
And Hillary said, I gave this Beanie Baby to Bill, because he's a Democrat donkey. So we already have this. I'm very familiar with this particular Beanie Baby. He has
Sure.
it in the Oval Office every now and then.
Right.
And my daughter's, you know, like, oh, you gave, you're into the Beanie Babies too? You know, kind of thing. So that moment is always, it wasn't just cursory. That's the
Right,
word I was looking for.
yeah.
It wasn't, oh, I'll do this. There might be a photographer around
Right.
here or something, and I'll do this because I remember Steve being nice to me, or, you know, it was,
Right.
she was genuinely interfacing with my
Right.
daughter in the, you know, in the hallway about the Beanie Babies. And I think and we have pictures of that. And
Right.
that to me said a lot, because and you know, women's causes and children's causes, again, and all this
Right.
stuff that they say about her, it almost gets put off, so far off to the side that you don't remember what she's done
Mm-hmm.
in terms of sex trafficking and all this stuff that she got really involved with.
Right.
Earnestly,
Yeah.
not just a curse, not just it's the right thing to do,
Right.
it's a nice thing to have on my resume. I think she's been sincere in those things.
Yeah.
And that was an example of her sincerity, I thought, that was reflected
Right.
in a lot of other things. I just, you know, someone said the other day, arguably, she's one of the most qualified persons, put aside the
Sure.
personality and all the likability and all.
Right.
Strict qualifications since Thomas Jefferson.
Sure, absolutely.
And there's a case that can be made for that. I mean,
Well, you
senator,
can't experience, yeah.
senator, Secretary of State,
Right.
First Lady, activist.
Right, that she's been involved, right. There's no question. So I think it's a very good question to kind of echo that
Yeah.
as far as, you know, that's a very telling memory, and that kind of echoes what we've been hearing also.
The human, there's
Right,
a real
human
human
element.
being there
Right,
that doesn't get
right.
doesn't get the cold, all these words they use
Right.
to describe her. So
Now,
jarring.
I know it's like 50, it's kind of hard to remember 50 years ago. Well, would you, like if you could say what was your favorite memory of like in high school or a time, would it be like hanging out with, you guys doing the Goldwater thing? Was there any other moment, or, I don't know, where is your favorite memory of her during high school, or that you can recall?
Well, I said I was in Oklahoma, and it was a big deal. Multiple nights, sellouts, and we'd all come out for an encore afterwards, and then they'd have each of us take a bow. And so when I took my bow, Hillary and my girlfriend and
Right.
that group stood up and started whistling and cheering. And, it was a simple time with it,
Sure.
And that was, and
So
that
she
was like,
wasn't just like for herself, she was cheering everybody else on.
yeah, that all these criticisms that she's out for, the Clintons are always
Right.
out to grab anything
Right.
for themselves. It's kind of annoying to me. 'Cause
Right.
unless she's I haven't been with her, so maybe things change, but
Sure.
that's not the Hillary that I ever saw
Sure.
there. I never saw the seeds of that in her youth.
Sure.
Or, yeah, she's just quite the opposite. I think she's, and Chelsea went to Stanford and was with I've kept in touch with my old girlfriend, Suki, and she lived in Palo Alto. And so they'd get together, and Chelsea would kind of, according to Suki, a nourished, good kid.
Yeah.
Not
considering
herself
that
a
was a tough
princess
environment
either.
to grow up in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Right. So Patricia, what's your take on
Yeah,
Steve? and-
also referring back to high school, you mentioned that Hillary was involved in a lot of various things. I was wondering, was she ever overwhelmed, do you know, and if she dropped any of her activities because of that?
It was so great to come to Maine South because it was a new school. It used to be a dump here, and they called it the dump for a long. Our chant at basketball games: "Nobody beats the dump," and so in that senior year, it was like a new beginning, everything was new. So so everyone was kind of saying, hey, this is a whole different, there isn't that, here's what everybody did in front of me, that's what I'm gonna do.
Right.
It was kind of
So
a
fresh
fresh
start for
start.
everybody.
And I think she had that, a lot of people did it, that they go, man, we got our whole new high school, we can do different things, we can have the newspaper, the yearbook staff, we can do stuff, and everyone, there was a kind of a euphoria about the new high school on D Road with a pond in front of it. I mean, everything was different. It
Right.
was, Maine East is just that, almost castle-ish, structured hierarchy feel to it. You came over here and it felt like going to, Fort Lauderdale. You had water, you had
Windows.
grass and
Right.
windows and
Right.
sunshine was coming in, and it was a nice thing because it just, people loosened up a little bit
Right.
from their mores that they might have had before. So I don't know, overwhelmed, I don't know. She's just damn competent. I can't imagine, maybe she's overwhelmed by some things that she would confide to her close friends, but she was like, let's take it on. We got a blank sheet of paper here. Why don't we do something special? And a lot of the Niles kids, attended Maine East, and there was always a little bit of, not West Side Story, but there was a little, but you got over here and it was mainly it was like Park Ridge School, but this could have been called Park Ridge High School. But they didn't do that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then there was also Maine West, which is now then closed shortly thereafter. Or not Maine
It was
West,
Maine
Maine,
North.
Maine North. That didn't, but they were trying to Park Ridge probably wanted its own high school, and they wanted to share it with Des Plaines or
Yeah.
Niles. And, I mean, I wasn't in the middle of all that, but it wouldn't surprise me
Yeah.
if that's what the dynamics were.
Sure.
So I would say an answer, I don't think she was overwhelmed. I think it was more, man, we got so much blank sheet of paper here. We can start everything. If we want to have a club, or this or that, or lacrosse, or whatever the lacrosse was at that time, everyone was open-minded to doing different things. And I was felt lucky.
Right, especially for you coming, it was like
It was
perfect.
a godsend.
Right. So
Godsend.
this
If I'd had
perfect
another
school
year
to
at
go
Maine
for you.
East, I would
Yeah.
have just been always pushing against
Yeah.
the heavy doors and stuff like that. But
Sure.
no, I was very, and it was a pretty social time. There were a lot of characters, and there were a lot of things happening. There was never, living in Park Ridge was not boring for me. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on. Never had to go into the city to find social activity or fun. You had stuff going on here.
So you guys they had, I understand there was a lot of youth dance halls, right? Or places where they would play, they would have bands, and it was like a nightclub, or I don't know what you
But
want to
mainly
call
it was
it.
people's houses where they had these
Wow.
big houses on on Lake Murphy or, where,
Venue.
and big backyards,
Right.
and so people would have parties. Where's the next one going to be? What parents will allow it?
Right,
And it was and those bands would play.
right.
And our proms, and again, I don't know now if prom is still a big deal, but that was a big deal then. And we went to Nippersink on a train, and
Nipper what was it?
Nippersink, a place, and
Is it
then
a
they had
restaurant?
pre-prom parties and post-prom parties.
Okay.
And it was very social, very social.
Did you have a driver's license? Did you drive back
Yeah.
then?
And one of the big things to do, you guys still go to Boobies? Does that ring a bell?
Buoys?
Boobies
Boobies,
in
okay.
Niles
The diner right on Niles.
on Milwaukee?
Mm-hmm.
It was a huge gathering place. Now the police would probably break up that kind of a function, but you'd be getting food. In fact, Hillary's 50th birthday, now you might want to double check this with Betsy when you talk to her,
Mhm.
because I think Betsy organizes. They talked the owners of Boobies into closing it for Hillary's birthday party.
Because did you guys go there? Okay.
It was a big hangout.
So it's still
And
there.
the first McDonald's, Herb Krock's first McDonald's, after he bought the rights in California, was on Oakton and Des Plaines. It's still a
Oh, that one,
monument.
the old one that's there.
And so that's what you would do too. You'd go, McDonald's was a new thing. You'd go and just park. And then you'd go in to get the food, but everyone would be talking. You'd fill the parking lot up. And everyone would, because you asked me if we drove,
Sure.
but you'd drive to places like McDonald's or Boobies or Riggio's. There's a pizza place
Yeah.
in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
And the other big thing to do, O'Hare was kind of opening then, and that was quite the thing, to have that big terminal. And you'd go and park in the garage, and you'd walk through all the airline places when there were no security.
Sure, a little different back
You'd
then.
walk and watch planes land and watch people get on planes, and that's what you do for entertainment. And I know that sounds kind of dumb, but no one would do that now, but O'Hare was kind of a special spot that you could get to in 5
Sure.
minutes. So those are the things that socially that went on. And then through college, it was people having parties during the summertime. That continued on. And people would bring people from their college.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd meet. There weren't too many clubs
Right.
or American Legion halls or VFW halls that I
Okay.
recall that were sponsoring that. It was kind of spontaneous.
Right. Yeah, we've heard Riggio's before, so Boobies, that's a good one.
Boobies
Yeah.
was a real popular
We'll
place.
go shoot some footage up there then. It's still around.
Betsy may have pictures of her cutting a cake there at Boobies. That
Okay.
might be fun for you
Yeah.
guys. Betsy really stays close to,
Yeah,
I mean-
Betsy is the one, she's really the catalyst on
linchpin
this.
to all this.
Right, because she's put us in touch with everybody.
She's been great from that aspect to,
Right,
and our reunions are really well, you know, Hillary comes back from, well, she wasn't back we had one this past summer.
she's, I think she had something else going on. I
Yeah.
think.
She had other fish to fry. But she's been back for reunions.
Right,
I remember all the black SUVs pulling in, and she'd get out and stay. That's to me something for, if you want to take one or two things away. I never thought I was, you know, manufactured sincerity with.
she wasn't a fake person to put on.
That, okay, I got to do this because somebody will
Right,
tell me I don't keep up with people, or, you know, she'd come and we had photo ops and stuff at the reunions, and she would sit there and dance, and Bill came back for some of them, you know, and they wouldn't just come and leave, you know, they'd stay. I remember them, the two of them, when he was Arkansas, he was the governor, and people were talking about him running, and they stayed at the reunion. They didn't
just fly in. So it kind of sounds like from high school on, it's from what you're saying is that she wasn't like, you know, she wasn't like a political fake person. She didn't lie, and she wasn't put on a persona for other. She was very genuine, and so
You wouldn't
even
hear
after
people walking
later,
away saying, "Oh, she's a phony, and she's just doing."
right,
that
she
because
seems
it's
very
the-
genuine.
she was
And
right to do
even with your daughter, like you've had moments where you experienced like, well, she could have been. She certainly could have had an excuse to not be completely genuine, but it's shown.
She wasn't going to gain anything by talking to my daughter.
Right,
I mean,
right,
yeah, no. I wasn't some ambassador from England or something.
mm-hmm,
You know,
right,
where she would have maybe felt compelled to do that.
Right.
That to me was demonstrative of her normal urge. It was a little person, and he was a cute little girl with Beanie Babies, and it touched her.
Right.
You know, it rang enough bells for her to
mm-hmm,
not just, you know,
Right.
okay, great, Annie, you know, stuff like that. And I remember too, you asked for a memory. When I saw her once, I said, everyone's talking, we all got a chance to ask one question in a group, 12 of us like this. And so she said, what question? I go, what in the hell is it like to be photographed by Annie Leibovitz? And she answered that question really nicely, and I don't remember all the
Right.
details, but that had nothing to do with policy or
Sure.
ambitions or whatever. But
Yeah.
she had been on the cover of Vanity Fair or one of those.
mm-hmm,
Do you know who Annie Leibovitz is? She's a well-known female photographer that's
she's
captured.
done all iconic images like David Bowie or, you know. all kinds-
Google her. You'll find that very interesting. She's
yeah,
a very interesting
very
person.
unique point of view.
And has captured the personality of people
Yeah.
with a camera. And so Hillary really liked that. She goes, oh, that was something, man. I didn't know about my makeup. I didn't know. And they were trying to do this, and it was, no, but Annie was great, and she didn't push me, and this and that. And it was, I was glad I asked the question, because
Right.
it's a human question rather
Yeah.
than, you know, are you going to run?
Right, right.
What are you going to change the law?
Right,
And,
right.
So,
She got all that out.
you know, she was, in fact, I have a picture of her when I asked her that question. So you can judge for yourself. My wife did this for me. So you can tell it's not, she's looking right at, that's when I asked her the question about Annie Leibovitz.
Oh, okay.
And she was kind of surprised that it's.
Yeah, well, I don't
Leibovitz.
think anyone had ever asked her that. I mean,
So what year was that?
oh yeah,
That was,
I knew you'd ask that. I don't know.
Was it
One of the
when she was,
reunions or-
when Bill was running for president, probably? Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
I saw her, I was a student at UW-Madison.
Oh,
I was in graduate school in, was it 92? Right, yeah, it was 92. So I saw her speak, yeah, and back then, she really came in and she had a great dynamite yellow outfit on, and she was dynamite. So anything else that girls that you want to talk about?
I did pull something out here that I thought was, maybe you guys have seen this. 5 things you should know about Hillary Clinton. Have you yanked this?
I have not seen that.
Do you mind?
Yeah, go
I don't
ahead.
know. Most Americans have a preformed opinion of Hillary Clinton, who is expected to announce her candidacy for president this weekend, so it goes back, it's April of 2015. Clinton has long implied that the public perception of her is all wrong. Well, as someone close to me once said, I'm probably the most famous person you really don't know, she told NBC. There's a picture of her in high school here. That's what she looked like in the yearbook.
She looks like one of you guys.
Is it still the Eli, or do they still have the yearbook?
Yep, that's the same thing.
Well, she started as a Republican. That we've talked enough about. But Paul Carlson was our freshman history teacher, I think. He's come to the reunion. He came to the reunions.
Yeah.
Is he dead now?
Yeah.
He died?
This is the unfortunate thing, is he's passed away and her Methodist ministers passed away about 5-6 years ago. So we've finished a previous oral history project where we were interviewing people from World War II and who were well in their 80s, and we missed a lot of people, and even now. So it's why it's not the best timing. She's busy, and you guys are busy supporting her, but you want to wait. So, but he's gone. We missed him, and but might as well find out what we can now.
There's a picture of her in college. But you see those thick, she had those thick glasses and one here. And those were the pants she wore.
Yes,
Have you
I
seen
was a
that
kid.
picture?
I had those in the 70s. My mom, that was the style.
This is June of 1969. She was wearing those.
Right.
She gave her commencement address, you know that, you know all that. This I found interesting. I didn't know this. She has not driven a car in over 20 years.
I believe that. For what I was from reading, she's never been, no one's ever said that they'll say a lot of great things about her, but that's not being a great driver. So, and once you get out of habit, yeah.
Well, think of how long she's been Secret Service
Yeah.
around.
So 92, that's 20, almost 25 years.
Yeah.
It's a long time.
So, can I ask some questions? Why are you doing what you're doing? What inspired you to try to give us Sunday time, and got other things to do?
Well, for me, I don't know. I like history, and I've always kind of been fascinated by Hillary just because she's someone who, location-wise and childhood-wise, is surprisingly similar to me. I grew up 3 blocks away from where she grew up, same school, same high school, same church. So just that part's
That's cool.
interesting, and just seeing how from beginnings, she's just a fascinating person, and that you never, if you knew her, it sounds like if you knew her in high school, you never would have guessed this is where she ended up. And I think that's, for me, as I'm kind of figuring out college and everything, to me that's comforting and interesting in that you don't have to know, because even
Yeah.
if you think you know, it's probably not true. I'm sure she didn't, when she was a junior figuring out where to go, she didn't think this is where it's taking me, because you don't know. And I think that part of her story is interesting, but then also just how you do, you see the politician of her, and even you see the news stories and the headlines, but then like there's a whole nother side. And I think that's true of everyone, but then to actually get to know that other side, I think is fascinating. So that's why I'm here.
Do you find other students like you that are fascinated by the fact that the potential president of the United States was walking up and down the halls or going to boobies or
I don't
at
think
the,
so.
she went to the
Yeah.
Pickwick a lot when it was the Pickwick, and do you
I don't-
feel that,
I don't think so as much. The school doesn't play it up that much, other than like in passing, like she's on the wall of honor. But that's like nobody mentions it like day to day. There's no political discussion of it like in classes or anything. Like you'd think, I mean, like I don't know. I'm not in Gov right now, so maybe it's different. But I feel like it's not a very discussed subject. I think like said, Park Ridge keeps her at an arm's length. And I think that comes from the public school battle of like school politics, like everything's separate, but I think it also comes from the fact that not everybody in Park Ridge is quite on board with that.
yeah. How about you?
Yeah, initially what sparked my interest in the documentary is my interest in politics and the presidential election. I've been following up on it, and Hillary is like the main candidate, so I wanted to find out more about her childhood, where she's coming from, because a lot of people portray her in this negative way. I wanted to see like people close to her, how they say that, and I know politicians are like, they've been known to be very like great social people that like they remember like you politicians remember you like throughout the years, and they keep great connection with people. So I thought like through doing these interviews that I learned so much about like that type of personality and people.
You guys should write her a letter.
Yeah, have we asked her if she'd be willing to come in and?
Well, I think what we're getting there.
Betsy said-
Betsy said that you know, she might be able to get us for an interview. So
Incredible.
yeah, so I think this is just part of the journey, and I think, you know, we're getting to know her gradually through her different friends and putting little pieces together, and I think getting a picture, and just I think I think just as you were saying, get to know the person, and you start hearing the themes. Now we're starting to hear that she's very loyal to people, that she's not very genuine, and then just the political process. Everybody seems, every politician is not genuine, but you start picking up on themes, and you'll start seeing those as we do the more interviews. We have one next week too. You know, just and we'll meet different people. And it's kind of interesting because people you have one perspective you had, and there's other people who knew her more
Intimately than
so
I.
yeah, but that's fine. But and we'll interview Betsy once we've had a lot of. We're kind of going for more. Her real close friends like people like Betsy we'll interview later on.
Ricketts.
And Ernie Ricketts. He's got some
Those
great
are
stories. Mhm.
naturals that I'm sure you
Mhm.
know of.
Yeah,
Patsy
I've talked to-
Henderson.
Hmm?
Patsy Henderson, is that name
Yeah,
come up?
yeah. I'm trying to think who. Is it? Who's
I
in
saw
it?
Patsy at the rally the
Oh,
other day.
did you?
And she'd be a good one for you to talk to. Cheryl Acton also. I don't know if that name's come up.
We have Judy
They live in the
Judy
area.
Osgood
Yeah,
next
Judy
week.
Osgood would be a
Yeah.
good one.
Yeah.
Jill Poyer, but she lives out in Oregon, so that's tough.
And then your old girlfriend.
She'd be a good one to talk to.
Yeah. Now she in California?
I'll try to send you, if I ever get an email from, I never
I
got
send
an
you a
email.
couple emails. I'm going to send it from if you could send me an email and then I'll reply back. Because I have one, maybe my one email account, maybe your email doesn't I've got a different email address, I'll send it to you. But we're going to go, I'm going to take my daughter to, a couple of her high school teachers are still alive. The ones they taught gym, but it was kind of like leadership.
Mhm.
And I talked to them, two of them, they live together, they're out in California or San Diego, and she's still out there, and it's a very Republican area. So, but she tells all her friends that, yeah, I taught Hillary leadership. So she's a donor and been a big supporter of hers. So I'm gonna try to get out there, but you know, she's not obviously she's your guys' age plus 20-something years. So, but she sounded very sharp. So we want to talk to her as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'll get you Sicky's email, because she'd be good.
Yeah.
She worked in human resources for NASA for years.
Okay.
And I think was kind of inspired to reach
Well,
for
isn't it
more and
irony?
more.
I don't know if you girls know. I mean, Hillary applied to be an astronaut when she was
Yeah.
in the 60s. She wrote a letter, and it said girls are not allowed. But her mom was very said basically, I think that she had a big influence. Like, you can try everything.
Yeah, I mean, she had that.
Don't let people tell you no. And I think it's interesting from an outsider. It's like she heard a lot of no's. There wasn't a lot. Girls were not supposed to do a lot of things, and you couldn't do this, and you weren't supposed to. And she did not let that deter her.
She's at the forefront of turning that
Mm-hmm.
paradigm.
Yeah.
I would say she's really a pioneer, I think, in a lot of ways, because she had the attitude
Yeah.
of, I'm not going to sit back and be, and she wasn't a wild ass revolutionary either. I mean, I don't think she did that. She and Bill had long hair, but I don't think they were
Right.
radical.
Renegade.
I went to school at Carroll College in
Oh, okay.
Waukesha.
Okay.
And I was student body president, and I gave the commencement address, and I'm sure that somehow I ended up doing that in that small little college off of maybe some of the same dynamics. I've always said, how did I end up all of a sudden doing what I did, and you never know. That's what I think. I've tried to embed that in my kids, Don't think you know. You don't know what's experiences are going to
If you didn't have that
drive you.
experience with the goal of getting out there
Right.
doing that, that gave you some kind of confidence, and when you went to
Just,
college,
and,
it was just
God,
like
this is
Hillary did the
interesting.
same
This is
thing.
interesting how people vote, why they vote a certain way, why they like somebody, don't like somebody. If you
Right.
don't get into something like that when you're young, when you have that opportunity, how crazy just
Right.
to tube yourself,
Right.
and I'm in my own sorority. I'm not going to talk to.
Yeah.
I don't need this. I don't need that. I don't need to travel. I don't need to, and.
Right.
And you get out there and you see things that, I don't mean to sound preachy, but you guys got such ability to communicate now with all of the technology that take advantage of it, and she's a good example to follow. Whether you vote for her or whatever, this isn't about that. This is about a woman that grew up in Park Ridge that dove in, and look where she's on the cover of the newspaper today.
Sure. Right.
And,
In the New York Times.
it's just timely, and it's just kind of, whatever happens to her, she will have left a legacy of something, whatever happens.
Absolutely.
And I just hope she can win. I think she could be a great female president. I think you talk to people. I've gotten to know a little bit the senator from Illinois. I've seen him at Hillary events, and Dick Durbin. He probably, Durbin might be somebody you want,
Yeah.
because he watched her in the Senate, and he's a real down-to-earth guy too. Normal Joe guy, not a
Right.
peacock.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And you talk, and they all go, "Oh no, Hillary. Hillary knows her shit."
Right.
She wouldn't walk in there.
She had a pretty good
She'd
reputation.
she'd do the work.
Right.
Who
was it? Robert Byrd, the senators, called her a workhorse, not a show horse. When he was. So, Steve, thank you very much.
It's fun. I think these projects are